gang. How are you? So this week has been brewing for a long time, and it's something I've wanted to talk about because I think for many of you, you notice behaviour in the world, in your families, in your workplaces, and you want a way of understanding how attitude, values, and the choices and decisions people make can be explained. How can they be understood? And, how can we make sense of the choices that people make and the decisions they make when they might be different to our own? So the story is this, which is, how did this come about? I have a colleague that I collaborate with who does similar work to me. And often we have situations where clients need us to work together. What I've noticed is he has a completely different way of doing business, thinking about the client than I do. And it got me thinking about those differences. And it got me thinking and feeling and noticing the people around me. We, at the moment, are in an interesting phase of the world's history where the gap between countries, organizations, and peoples in general is getting smaller and smaller. We had globalization, then we had the internet, and both of those things mean that we are more accessible to one another than we've ever been. And that's kind of clashing with a pervasive view of the rights or needs of me as an individual. So this is a little bit social, a little bit cultural, but it's also economic. And what I want to explain to you is that underlying all that is an assumption that you in your own experience can make on a daily basis that changes how you behave. It changes what you value and it changes how you think. Let me tell you more. So what I'm talking about is an underlying assumption that if you give yourself some time and sort of deeply go into what you really feel about these different topics and what you think and feel about them, you'll have a assumption that you make about yourself and about your own identity. And, with these things, you often need to simplify them to explain them. The simplest way I can explain it is if you look deeply at what you believe yourself to be and who you are in relation to others, you will fundamentally either believe that you are an I, a self, that is a unit of one, that is separate from others and needs to survive in a world around it. Or you'll believe that you as a one, as an I, is connected to all the other living things, animals, human beings, the earth around you. And it's a bit woo-woo. It's a bit philosophical. But I just want to get you to think and stop for a minute which one of those two belief systems you most identify with. So if we think about these, if you believe you're a unit of one, you essentially believe that you're more of a separate self. You're disconnected from the things, the living things around you. You've got to survive. It's survival of the fittest, and it's mostly a closed system, which is that I'm better to protect myself. I'm better to limit myself. I'm better to keep myself closed to survive. And when you believe and you're disconnected, you actually have this sense that sort of all living beings share something in common. Our existence, whatever it is, how you feel it, you feel like we all have something in common. You believe that, sort of all things are connected, and it's all one sort of open system that we share. And it's difficult to know whether you believe this intellectually or you believe it in your guts, but either way, that's what you believe, and that's how you think, that's how you feel, and that's what you know. So the thing that's important is, if we go back to my original story and we think about you, right, and we think about these two main paradigms. They're not really paradigms, they're more belief systems. Let's think about what they now mean for your business, because that's sort of my area of expertise and where I'm looking to make a difference to the world in the way that business, corporations, boards, the way that works. So we think about now that the way organizations work, and I do a lot of work now with the board and the top team. One of the biggest problems that I see is that these people get in if they think this way, is they get disconnected from the external environment. Let's just use a smaller pen so you can see that. Because they believe that they're a separate organization from the external world. So rather than being connected and to all things around them. So, this is the classic Kodak moment. As they see that people's needs change towards digital, they want to continue to do the same thing because it's just about what they do and not about the world around them. Whereas those that are more systemic, open, and see the connections are much more open to evolution, disruption, adaptation. And what we're seeing is that this I way of existing is being disrupted right now. We're noticing that those that think that way are being tested. So it's really important that you think strategically and economically, around the interconnections between what you do and how it affects the world and how it interconnects with the world, because that's where your opportunities and risks are. Right? That's where the opportunities and the risks are for you. Now, if we think about your team, right, let's just go out. We know with a team that you could believe with a team that it's a disconnected team, that you're a separate team from the rest of the organization. You're a separate team from the market. You're a separate team from the rest of the industry. And you could become very insular. Or you could see those connections between, in this one, your team and other teams. And you'd be a team of teams and see that you're all actually interconnected. And then you'd see the linkage between your team and the executive team. And those linkages would be, and the executive teams of your clients and of your stakeholders. And again, the third level of this is, let's now look at you as an individual. And because this comes down to your experience. Your experience will have driven you as an individual to think one of these two ways. You know, if you'd have some negative experiences of the world, you may want to have closed up. See yourself as disconnected, as alone, as isolated. That's tough. Or you may get this interconnection of everything. Individually, it's a framework and attitude for how you see the world. Okay, so you know how you can develop skill, but you've got to hire for attitude. This is one of those core attitudes, which is individually, which one of these two are you choosing? So let's summarize. I want you to test this in your experience. Okay, what I mean by that is if you think one way, try the other and see what outcomes happen, see what actually happens in the world. If you choose to think as an interconnected, as we're all one, and feel that way as opposed to a unit of one. And see what happens to your relationships. See what happens to your work. See what happens to your family life. See what happens to your friendships, your role in the community. And let me know, right? What difference does it make if you make this different choice? Go well. See you next week on the Reason of the Road.